longevity.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be better.
Yes.
Okay. Great. See, this is why these conversations. Next slide, please. So the role of the statement, because the next question that we have is, how does the statement of cash flow benefit or affect your business? What do you think? What should we target on this one?
It allows me to see, and it allows you to see in detail what exactly is happening with my business.
Okay.
It allows me to see in detail those things that I am not necessarily focusing on in my day-to-day operation of my company.
Okay.
So these statements to me are critical. It's just not
Okay.
necessarily what I'm thinking of when I'm having a conversation to make my customers buy more.
Right. Right. Next slide, please. And on the purpose of having a good cash flow, so in other words, the question here is, what is the purpose of having a statement of cash flow?
It shows me in detail. I mean, I'm sorry that this slide's a bit repetitive, but it shows me in detail the things that I am not necessarily focusing on in my day-to-day relationship with my customers and my employees.
Okay, so let's go back to the other slide real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So on this one, it is the role of statement of cash flow. This is still a detail, whereas the next slide, one more time, the next slide. This is going more in, more definitive, more precise.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Next slide. Okay, so on this one is, go ahead, sir.
No, this is important because this is what your accountant's going to tell you. And these are things that I think, that are critical for me to know. It's not necessarily the things I think about in detail every day, but these are very important. It's required. Explains changes in cash during the period. You got to know those things. You got to know what's happening.
Okay, so this is actually good that you're telling me that, because one of the questions is, what role does the statement play? That even though this is a conversation that you would typically have with your accountant, these are things that you have to be mindful of.
Yes, absolutely.
Because even though it's not on a day-to-day, it affects your day-to-day.
Correct.
Okay,
And
next
then
slide.
the next slide.
Oh, go ahead.
No, the next slide that you're going to show is just simply, this is the 3 elements of cash flow.
Okay.
Just so you understand. And I focus on
that's
the
great.
operating, not you, but the audience. So the operating activities are my focus all the time. That's all I focus on, except when I'm buying big, if I'm buying large, large amounts of equipment, or selling it, or I finance some of my activity, or I finance some of my customers' activity. Those are kind of a little more complicated, and those aren't necessarily the interest of the listener. It's for when you're doing some serious kind of money, and when you're doing some serious kind of relationships.
We're going live on Facebook in a minute, so just so you know.
No, that's great. That's not an issue.
And the next slide.
Okay.
This is it in a nutshell. This is how I think. Inflows and outflows.
Now, for those of you who are seeing us on Facebook, this is behind the scene things as we get ready to prepare on Let's Do Business, right? And everybody does business, but stand by as we get ready to present to you our webinar Wednesdays. So give us a few seconds. Join us as we're going through, kind of doing some tidbits, making sure that you get the real story of how important it is to know what your cash flow really is, whether it's in and out. We want to prevent more of it going out and making sure more of it stays in. So give us a few more seconds. Now, Mr. Stevens, is there anything, the next slide?
These are just examples. The first one's a quarterly example, and the second one is an annual example. And I'm hoping that maybe some of the listeners would request copies of this of these slides, just because it makes things easy to understand.
No, this is a great example.
Right. So I mean, I don't want to go through this in detail, but it's pretty straightforward. The first one being quarterly, the second one being annual. But the next thing that the listener would want to do is take their ideas to their accountant, so that they can get a better understanding as you detail out each and every one of these categories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Makes sense to me. All right.
You know, Marty, that picture is of your graduation. You know, do you remember that?
What? Do you have it there?
The picture of
Oh yeah.
that's
So,
the other person in that picture is you.
so for my graduation, I received an award as an outstanding student for my MBA. And one of our faculty members had to come out like and make a video and do a photo shoot with us and all of that. So that picture where Hugh's at is for that particular photo shoot.
Understandable. Understandable.
Oh, it's understandable, all right. Wow. Okay, are we good?
So attendees are starting to come.
Okay.
We're ready to start in a minute.
Absolutely.
Do I need the makeup person to come in?
A little blush.
Juanita, if you want to let me know when to move to the next slides, or Hugh, when y'all are ready, just give me like, say next slide and I'll transition from there.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Webinar Wednesdays. Let's talk business. And yes, we all talk about business, but one of the things that we always think about is cash. So today, we're actually going to be talking about that very subject. Now, before I move on and let's get started, I want to inform you about Buy Local and Grow SA. It's a one-stop website of resources for small businesses. Now, Buy Local is a platform designed for business owners like yourself. It's a website that you're going to be able to access free resources ranging from procurement opportunities to promoting your business and increasing visibility absolutely for free. I know we hear those words for free, but it is. So the other thing too is we have some new enhancements and features such as having the ability to post business promotions for to your profile. And so if you're having a sale or introducing a new product or even a service, you can use Buy Local as another venue to advertise your services or product. Now, we've also added procurement opportunities where you can save the ones that you're interested, along with being able to post contract opportunities of your own as well. Now, it only takes about 5 or 10 minutes, especially since you're a business owner, and I know you have that material readily available to register. Now, once you register and you're approved, you can unlock a whole new way of doing business with business in San Antonio. But talking about business here in San Antonio, Mighty, what is it that we're doing to be able to promote and highlight some of our local businesses?
So we're giving out a giveaway. So for all those businesses that have registered to our website, you're automatically entered for a chance to win $500 cash. Yes, you heard that correctly. And we're doing it for 8 weeks. And today we have a special guest because we're announcing our winner through our webinar. So today we're announcing our lucky winner for this week. And if we can bring him on the line, I don't know if he's already ready to jump on. Sabrina, is he ready or should we wait on him?
We should wait. He's not on yet.
Okay, so we'll announce him later once he's on the call. I'll let you all know. We're gonna skip that slide for now, but once he's on the call, we're gonna definitely announce who the winner is for this week. So if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend you to join our platform and register your business through Buy Local for a chance to win not only $500, but also to win additional resources and additional help and support and promotional avenues and procurement opportunities absolutely for free for your business. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and do it.
Now, first of all, I want to thank all of our sponsors, HEB, Wells Fargo, and the City of San Antonio Economic Development. Now, along with those are supporters. As you can see, all these amazing businesses and Chamber of Commerce, thank you to all of you, and especially to our audience for being present and allowing us to be able to be here and serve you. But you're not here to hear thank yous and supporters. You're here to hear If you'll go to the next slide.
Wow.
There you go. Mr. Hugh Stevens. Now, Mr. Hugh Stevens is a director of Harvey Naeem Center. Whoops. I apologize, it's not coming up. Center for Business Innovation and Social Responsibility. He's also a board member of the Maestro Entrepreneur Center. But prior to coming to San Antonio and to St. Mary's University, Mr. Stevens served as an interim strategic operations and financial officer for Main Brands LLC with offices in Booth Bay Harbor and Lockheed Mills, Maine. His work includes reorganizing a number of recently shuttered and discontinued operations and wood products brands. Now, in addition, Mr. Stevens crafted strategies in support of brand resurrection and development, product development, operational budgeting, and day-to-day accounting processes with income and cash flow statements. Now, P&L analysis, products and process-specific cost benefits analysis, that comes along as he was able to be successful with Main Brands. Now, this significant holding relating to renewable and non-renewable resources management, which were part of his operational profile. Now, while he was at the University of Maine, Mr. Stevens was responsible for creating and designing and implementing business support programs as the director of the Office of Special Operations for the School of Economics. Now, he also served as the executive director for the SOE, which is a knowledge transfer analysis, which was established in September of 2008. Now, on June 1st of 2011, Stevens and his team expanded the program to serve the entire state as well as engaging in projects in New England and New York. He was also responsible for accessing and securing all significant fundings from opportunities and agencies collaborating public and private and to sustain KTA efforts. Now, Mr. Stevens has over 30 years of work experience in the private sector, including principal partner of a small cap manufacturing company. He also has served as the chief operating officer and executive vice president for prominent nonprofits in Western New York, and as a principal partner for a managerial, organizational, and financial consultancy. Now, again, talk about being able not just to talk about business, but let's talk about money, Mr. Stevens.
Okay, let's talk about it. Would you like me to comment on that first slide?
Oh, please. I'm so sorry. My apologies, please.
Oh, no. So when we're talking about business and when we're talking about what we're doing in business, there's a couple of things that I like to focus on, and thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. It really comes down to cash flow. I have a product and I have an ability to make that product. The ability to make the product is a cost, and the product's going to generate revenue. And when it really comes down to, for me as a business owner, and I'm not an accountant, so I want to make that really clear. So a lot of that introduction, all that work was done with my accountants. When I'm operating, I'm thinking of two things: incoming cash and outgoing cash. That's it, cash in, cash out. This slide kind of boils it down for all of us to make it a little bit easier. There are three areas of cash inflows that you have to kind of focus on. But for me, I'm going to focus on operating activities, because that's my relationship with my employees and it's my relationship with my customers. And I think it's really critical for all of us to want to continue and to foster our relationship with both our ability to make the product, but also our ability to sell the product.
Now, according to this cash inflow, and you're saying you're gonna focus on operating activities, but I also see investing activities and financial activities, which I'm sure that plays just as an important part, right?
Critical.
However,
but that's going to be more about my discussions with my accountant. When I'm in day-to-day mode, and again, let's talk about my first company. It was a clothing manufacturer. My only focus is, and I shouldn't say only, but my primary focus is to make sure that we're maximizing outcomes. The maximizing outcomes is keeping costs low and keeping revenues high. I know that sounds simple, and I know that it sounds a little bit rudimentary, and it's basic, But if I keep it basic, then I can focus on all the details that go into making that product. When it comes to cash flows regarding investing activities and financing activities, those are discussions I'm going to have with my accountant, and I have lots of them. But my accountant isn't always there to make the product with me, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. So I guess to have that little bit of commentary, like Jerry Maguire says, show me the money. We're really going to show the customers the money because that's really your focus.
Correct. It's always going to be keep my life simple around me, because the relationship with your ability to make it, your employees, and your relationship with your ability to sell it, your customers, is somewhat, well, it's always complex. Every customer is different, and every relationship with every customer is different, especially if you're selling high ticket and you want to foster those relationships. I can't be focusing on my investment activities. Not that I don't, I do, but in the day-to-day operation, I don't always focus in on those second two categories.
Not this, and that makes perfectly good sense because, like you said, your accountant's not going to be there on your day-to-day decision.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this cash flow really affect your in as well as out on your business
So
with this one?
all right, so I can't speak for all the people that are listening in that are business owners, but we're always trying to find the right price point. We're always trying to find where do I sell the most product, and part of it is my ability to sell it because I have to have some sales skills. Part of my ability is to price it right, and part of my ability is to make sure that I'm in the right market. When I'm pricing right, that means you've done a lot of research before you started this. You did a lot of research on making sure that that product, that service is priced so it'll sell it'll sell at far more frequency given the amount of time you had to put into the planning process. So there's a balance someplace. But you can't underestimate the thoroughness that you have to go through to make sure that your planning and your research and your pricing analysis, we'll say, is in its correct place. And then your ability to produce that product, you have to do a little research there too. Am I making the product in its most efficient state? Am I doing it most efficiently? That to me is maximizing outcomes.
Okay. So right now, and I know probably one of the thoughts on some of our audience is, is this something that has been affecting us because of COVID? Now, and again, I'm not making the statement because I too am not an accountant, but these are some of the things that we probably gives us it's perfect timing to be able to review this cash flow and how it's affecting our business because it was probably already there even before COVID. This just gives us that opportunity to really review on how to restructure it, readdress it, and really fine point where the cash flow or maybe the lack of cash flow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issues of COVID aren't necessarily going to be reflective of the issues of the health of your company. However, it very well may be affecting your relationship with your customer, but I think you have to see it as an opportunity too. I mean, I can't speak for all companies because we don't know necessarily what they're making. But for example, my first company, and I still own it, is a suit manufacturing company, and it's all done by hand. I can tell you right now, business is not thriving because people are not buying suits. However, we long ago got into a down market production where we were selling cheaper clothes, more machine made, and it's sort of I can tell you right now, it's saving the company. So we have the ability to not just make, it's called bespoke clothing. We have the ability to make machine made clothing. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is that 10 years ago, we made the decision to do this. 10 years ago, remember, we were going through a finance crisis and people weren't buying suits then. So we had to make a decision that apparently is pretty foresightful in getting into a less expensive market. That to me is planning, that's research, that's doing what you need to do to maximize your outcomes. Don't blame it on COVID. And I'm not dismissing COVID, trust me. I firmly believe that the work that you're doing needs to be a bit more foresightful than just what's happening now. You need to think in terms of, is this something I can, so if you're going to accommodate COVID and you're going to accommodate to your customers, you got to kind of make sure that as we exit the issues of COVID and those are resolved, am I then going to have to research again? Do I have the right customers? If that makes sense. I
No,
want to make sure that this is kind of a continuum. I'm doing this all the time. It's about my relationship with my customers, which brings me back to the original discussion. I don't want to be buried in all my details of my accounting. No disrespect to any accountant, trust me. I just want to make sure that I can maximize my outcomes, both input and output.
and that is a perfect time to be able to go to the next slide, which is how does the statement of cash flow benefit or affect your business? So what role does it play?
The role it plays for me is it helps me make short-term decisions that would lead to long-term decisions. I mean, we get into the details of this, but by training, I'm an economist. I'm going to give you all the story here. It's going to be real quick. By education, I'm an economist. By training, I'm a concert pianist. And yes, so you didn't see that in my bio. And by work, I run a center, an innovation center at a university. It's my second time around. So my thought processes are going to be a little bit research laden. Cash flow statements serve a very, very plain and simple role. It helps me tell me where I am right now. It helps me tell me where I am right at the end of the month. Whatever period you're keeping for your cash flow statement, and some of us can get creative with it and do it by the day, I know where I stand. That helps me make decisions for today, but it also helps me make decisions for out into the future.
Well, I'm going to play off of that because that sounds like sweet music to me. So absolutely. Because, well, no, when we're talking about, on a day-to-day, we sometimes get in the weeds about, getting the details. And the details are just as important. However, those details, just becoming aware of them, helps us stay in the day-to-day with our customers, which leads me to the next one, which is, go ahead.
Hold on. In the second bullet point, the firm's ability to meet its obligations, there you have it. That's what it's telling me. I need to know about my obligations, which helps me make decisions for today, tomorrow, and out into the future.
Now, it helps you make the day-to-day on the obligations.
Yeah.
But here, in having that statement, what is the purpose of having that statement? And I believe that it goes into our next slide. Is now you mentioned how it's detailed, and this one's a little bit more fine-tuned and more in the weeds and making sure. Now, we talk about weeds as if it's a negative, but in reality, those are the ones that you need to kind of go out, stomp on and pull them out, get rid of them so that you can increase that cash flow.
Yes.
Right?
Agreed. Totally agree.
So tell me about this one. What is it that I mean, I know we talked about the statement on the flow and the benefits, but this one seems a little bit more detailed, Mr. Stevens.
It is, and don't misunderstand. I'm not dismissing detail, but these are the things that you read at the end of the day. These are not necessarily why you're having a discussion with your production manager that I'm going to. But these are as important as it comes. Your operating activities, your investing activities, and your financing activities. The second two, investing and financing, is likely to be a discussion you're going to have as you grow, as you scale, as you need to make decisions that require you buying equipment for the future. And again, I don't want to confuse everybody here, but back to my accountant. My accountant's going to tell me how this helps me make decisions. I can make decisions based on operating cash flow. I can make decisions myself. But when it comes to the accounting process in its entirety and the cash flow statement, I'm likely to not be too far away from a phone call or a meeting with my accountant. And those second two are very important for everybody to sort of get a better idea with their accountant, not your bookkeeper. Just remember, they're two different people, but your accountant. And
it's important that you clarified that because unfortunately, a lot of people think it's the same category, bookkeeping and accountant or can you clarify a little bit on that? Because sometimes it's misleading. People say, oh yeah, I speak to my bookkeeper. Well, bookkeeper maybe has the receipts, but your accountant, he kind of becomes your best friend sometimes. Am I wrong?
Oh man, I got to tell you, I remember when I first went into business, somebody told me, make sure you have a good attorney, make sure you have a good accountant, because the accountant's going to help you make the maximized decision. And that's really what we're all doing, is we're trying to maximize our outcomes. And without my accountant, I don't get there. I can move along and I can make a few bucks, but my bookkeeper is documenting everything under the direction of my accountant. And in my case, my bookkeeper works for my accountant. So I would say I probably pay too much for the documentation, but I can guarantee it's right.
Understood. Understood. Now, next slide, please. Now we've gone through all this statement. What is this role that it plays on? Now we talked about the details and we talked about the others, and we're seeing here cash is king. Tell me, how important is at this point?
I think this slide simply just works off the last two, and it's just telling you, and for me, it's telling me cash is king. I really want to know how much cash do I have? Or am I,
Right.
maybe not think in terms of cash, how do I have the ability to fulfill my obligations to my company?
Right.
That might be a little bit more professional, but it's also a little more refined way of saying, yeah, cash is king, but holding it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You know that you have to pay to make things, you got to keep the thing working. And to me, where I stand at any particular time, and believe me, it's a continuum, I need to know that I can fulfill my obligations all the way around. And let me just say something. As a business
Absolutely.
owner, when you have 200 employees, you have 400 to 800 mouths to feed. And those are responsibilities you take very seriously. And to me, those are always in the back of my mind about what it is I'm trying to achieve as a business owner, right? I'm trying to make money, but I'm also providing a living for my employees. I'm also providing usefulness for my equipment. And to me, these three slides tell me everything I need to know about how I fulfill my obligations. And those are important to me. It's not exactly a conversation you're going to have with your accountant or your attorney because they serve a very different role. They're advisors. But to me, they're just, it's critical information, and it's critical because it helps me sleep at night. If you want to know why this all works, or why cash is king is important, or explain the change in cash during the period, it helps me sleep at night to know that.
Now, you touched on explaining the change of cash during this period. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because everyone that I've talked to, well, not everyone, a few, is that, well, I'm just increasing my cash. I'm increasing my cash. Now, I understand that you increase it, but you also touched on, you know, you have the cash. What are you doing with it? And we've all talked about increase your cash flow, but as the cash is changing during this period, how do you manage it? Or what are some of the things that you should keep in mind on the changes on that cash?
Well, so, oh boy, for me, it's telling me something. So when there's change in cash, it's telling me something. If there's a reduction in the amount of cash I have on hand, or the
Right.
flow is starting to change negatively, that's
Right.
telling me something, and it's likely telling me it's not difficult for any of you all to figure this out, but there may be a
Right.
problem with my production side. I may be spending too much money producing my product, or
Right.
I'm not getting enough for the product that I'm selling. Nothing's changed in my production side, but I'm not getting enough, or I've had a reduction in the transaction, the number of sales I made. So
Okay.
again, let's go back to the clothing analogy. I mean, my suit sales are down. Well, okay, so my cash is down. And it may not show up right away, but it's going to show up. Remember, there's accrual and cash styles of accounting. And I don't want to get into that. That's for an accountant to talk to you about.
Right.
But it's going to tell me what's happening pretty quickly about my product. And if my product is challenged, if my product's not priced right, and I can't express strongly enough, did you do the research into the pricing position of your product? If I did, I'll give you the example. I buy the clothing company and my competitors are all getting more for their suits and I'm going broke. So,
Mm-hmm.
and believe me, for the first 6 months of the company, I'm going broke. And I got 200 employees and I'm not even making payroll yet. So the point, real strong point here is I didn't do the research on the price points of my product. I had to,
Right.
and this was a really difficult discussion to have with the people that I bought the company from were now my employees. How come we're not getting enough for our product? And the response was, we're afraid to raise the price. I said, but
Mm.
our direct competitors are getting 25% more for the same product. Why are we not competing? Are we making a crappier product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't do the research. Cash flow was telling me everything. As a matter of fact, I got into such a bind, I had to borrow money. Those are
Oh, wow.
considerations that these slides are telling you at some point when that cash flow starts to change, or you're noticing ups and downs, you need to pay attention to what's happening both from the production side and the revenue side. That's what it's telling. I know it's simple.
Now,
Sorry.
no, no. It does sound simple, but you're absolutely right. Don't be reactive, be responsive.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't take that into consideration because most of the small businesses, and including myself, we took a look at the immediate, not going into, propelling ourselves 3 months forward with the old theory of be prepared for business in 3 months. So yes, be reactive at the moment, but also be prepared to be responsive, because that cash flow, like you stated, it's not going to be noticeable initially, but over at least even the first quarter, you'll see the effect. But you do have to go back in and do that analysis. Now, I don't know about the audience, and I'm seeing required by GAAP. What is GAAP? I know. And it's not gap. So
General accepted accounting principle, and again, this is your accountant telling you these are the rules
no,
of how they operate, right? So that's simply your accountant will explain that all to you. But those are the rules on which they operate and how they determine, cash flow statements, balance sheets, profit and loss, general accepted accounting principles. Somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. I know there's people
no,
that can tell us that.
no, but
Close.
you know what? You're right. It's the general accounting purpose, right?
I think that's close. Somebody's going to
It's
tell us.
close. It's close. And that's okay though. But the thing is, those are the things that we have to bring to the forefront and have those discussions. Now, what elements should we keep an eye out on in the statement of cash flow? What are some of the things? Is that our next one? Let me see.
The next one is the three elements. And again,
Okay.
I focus on operating just because I can deal with operating, not
Can we
being
go? There you go.
not being
Yeah.
an accountant. I can deal with operating activities in right now, right? I mean, so I'm making those decisions right now. The other two, although they're incredibly important, that's not something that I try to work with unless I got my accountant in the room. So if I'm making big expenditures or I'm selling a piece of land that I produce product on, these can kind of be explained out to you a little bit more in detail. I'm going to always focus on the top one. Operating activities is something I can deal with. That doesn't mean that the other two are any less important.
Right. But what we are focusing on is what everyone is really needing to address at the moment.
Yes.
And you're right, Mr. Stevens, because right now, operating day to day in this new, climate is so different as in operating, 3 months ago. So yes, how is it affecting us now? What are the things that you're looking at as far as your daily operating activities?
So, I mean, the best I can do for you is to explain to you with the two companies that I'm most closely involved in. The solar company that I'm involved in is expanding faster than they can manage. With COVID,
Okay.
is allowing them opportunity. People are looking to save money. And in the Northeast, solar is, I know it's popular here, but in the Northeast, it's real popular because the states have incredibly generous incentive programs. So with that all said, our biggest issue with that company is expansion. And trust me, in cash flow, because of all three of these different categories, cash flow can become a bigger problem when you're growing vertically than it can when you're going broke. So we're having challenges about buying equipment, hiring new employees before we have the money to hire them because we're trying to anticipate the market, anticipate growth. So I can tell you right now, our cash flow statement is looking pretty meager, but we're making all kinds of sales. So
Right.
those are that's the one business. The clothing business, of which I'm not involved with day to day, is challenged right now. So we have to find different ways to make money. We may be producing different product. We don't know yet. And that's just a fact of life. And it was a fact of life 10 years ago. It was a fact of life 30 years ago. Oh boy, 35 years ago when I bought it. So it's a fact of life that maybe we need to change. Maybe we need to adapt. Cash flow tells us a lot about that it's right now. It's staring you at the face. We need to make these decisions now.
So the question I had asked for the audience is, what element should we keep an eye on in the statement of cash flow? And I think you really summed it up perfectly, because it's opportunity. I really think that's what you really targeted was opportunity, not anticipating how fast you're going to be growing. Those were great examples because you're right. Having a tailored suit that makes you look like $1,000,000 may have been a priority back then, depending on what meeting you're going to. But solar, which is a need now as people are looking to reduce their expenses, even in businesses, is an area. Opportunity sometimes creates another issue because of the expansion and the growth. So
Right.
very well put. Now,
Right.
and even though we're not touching the investments and activities, the rest of those, what I'm hearing is it still affects those. So keep that relationship close and ready.
Correct.
Now, as we're looking at operating activities, what falls under inflow and outflow? And I believe that's our next slide.
Well, the way I look at it for just general operating purposes is just how it's described. Customers' interest in dividends. Interest in dividends, not really not a concern. Customers is everything, right? That's who I'm selling to. Outflows, suppliers to goods. This is back to your obligations. Outflows are my immediate obligations in producing my product. Income taxes, yes, it's important. But again, that's a discussion that's always going to go back to my accountant. However, the top two, suppliers of goods, salaries, and wages, are things that I think of immediately. The rest of it is equally important, but obligations. Can I make my product? My vendors, my suppliers, and then the wages, right? That's how I make my product. Can I make the product? Can I do I have enough cash to pay everybody? If I can't, then I got to either start borrowing money or I have to make some changes in the top part about customers. I'm always going to focus on number one in the inflows, customers, and then outflows. And I'm pretty sure that most of the small business people, because I'm still small, think somewhat the same way. Customers,
Right.
suppliers, and wages.
Now, we've talked about products. How does this affect services? Like, I don't know, delivery services or employment services. What are some of the things that we need to take into consideration in those areas?
The thought process is going to, the cycle or the turnaround of your cash might be a bit longer. So, you're billing, you may be billing 30, 45 days, whatever. You're
Right.
billing for your service. When I consult, I bill, I don't get paid immediately. I get paid a deposit to actually take on the job. And then there's another deposit in the middle of the job. And then there's a deposit at the end. And those are longer turnaround cycles. But you're still trying to make money, and there's still there's still a cash flow that you have to follow, because I may be taking 3 or 4 consulting jobs at once. But the immediacy of the decision is going to be a bit different in a service, especially if you're billing for it. If you're a delivery service, it may be no different. The transaction may be from the time you pick up to the time you drop off, and you're paid immediately, right? So the customer transaction relationship may be very similar to me selling a drink at a bar. It may be very day-to-day immediate. I think your personality or your mindset may be a little bit different, but the actual analysis of how my cash flow works with the cost of delivering, right? So we'll go back to the delivery service. There's a cost for me to deliver that, and am I charging enough to generate positive cash flow when I deliver the good, right? So when the transaction happens, is it more than what I'm paying to deliver it, right? So vehicle, gas, etc.
Right. Now, I know that there, some of our audience are like trainers, or some of them are painters.
Mhm.
Some of them are like counselors and things of that nature.
Mhm.
What type of conversation should those businesses be having?
Well, again, this is a little bit different from what I do, but it's not all that different from my consulting work. So my consulting work is, well, I charge by the hour. I'm not going to get into what I charge, but I charge by the hour like a counseling service does, or I charge by an increment of time, or an increment of the completion of the job. I don't think that the cash flow response should be any different. I think that their relationship with their customers is different. So the way they pursue customers, or the way they get new customers in, is going to be a bit different. It's going to be a lot different than the way I get, again, back to the bar analogy or the retail analogy. My customer, I advertise, I get a new customer, and my revenues go up. Again, very simplistic, sorry to say, but I think those are, I don't think the cash flow implications makes me think a whole lot differently. It's all about my relationship with my customer is going to make me think differently.
Now, here's my favorite part, because I've been privy to be able to see the next one is, what are some examples of being able to use this? How are these things are being used? And
Okay,
I
so
really love this.
the first one
I
is
know I love numbers. Sorry.
no, fine. I'm jumping in here. The first, both of these are landscape businesses, and the first one is kind of tells it all. You've got quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and so say it's a Northeastern company. They're not going to be doing a whole lot of landscaping services in quarter one and four for obvious reasons. So that I don't even know that this is true. I don't even know that this company is in the Northeast. I'm just going to guess that it is. So nothing much happening, but during the spring and summer and fall, a lot of things are happening. So that tells me a little bit about what's happening revenue-wise from my landscaping services. Then there's the window cleaning services, with another good example. And I'm almost sure that this is in a place that has a significant winter. I can see that, right? So you start to be able to determine, well, I could get location out of this. And so maybe there's some other services that I can provide that would pick up revenues in quarter one and quarter four. And again, those are the revenue side of the discussion. There's the expenditure side of it, which of course is important. But look at the bottom. It's telling me a little bit of story about what's happening with my business. And where do I make my most money? Quarter two and quarter three. Here's the question. I know a lot of you out there are going to agree with this or disagree, whatever, but a lot of you do the very same thing. Where's my opportunity? Am I going to start chasing more customers in quarter two and quarter three that are going to probably require me to hire more and more people? Or are there opportunities to be gained from quarter one and quarter four? I would say there's opportunity. Again, back to the COVID. There's opportunity right now. So I'm going to start to think, what are my opportunities based on my analysis of my cash flow?
And absolutely, I'm looking at window cleaning services, between the quarters.
Mhm.
And you're right. I would think of sterilization, along with the
Mm.
window cleaning,
Mhm.
not just that. I would think of repairs when they have nicks and things of that nature. That would be optimal time to be able to start doing those maintenances that typically kind of get pushed back because you're too busy having that clear frontal view. So yes, I
Agree.
definitely can see that.
I'll give you a good example. The last university job I had was at the University of Maine, and when COVID hit, the Advanced Manufacturing Center was struggling with consulting work. They went to LL Bean, and LL Bean decided, you know what, we should be selling sterilization products for both our internally, we should be using it internally, but selling it to our customers. And so the University of Maine's Manufacturing Center set up a manufacturing line, and they were paid to make these products for LL Bean that just weren't able to set up as quickly as they were able to set up. So the director, who was a friend of mine, he saw opportunity, he grabbed it, and they're still making some products for LL Bean. And I think it again came from their inability to generate cash for the center. It's a business. Motivated them to reach out and to find different ways. They were losing money, and now they're not. It's as simple as that.
So I guess I was definitely on target and I showed someone else the money at this point, huh?
Exactly.
Now, now this analysis example is available. Mr. Stevens says that if you would like this information, please request it. If you even want this whole information about, the webinar and what we've presented to you, please email at mighty@maestrocenter.org. Now, right now is a perfect time to ask questions if you have any. Please feel free to put them into our chat and ask for those questions. Now, I do have one.
Go
Now,
ahead.
uh, being able to pivot and move in the next in a whole different realm, does that take you going back to doing another analysis? Because everything requires, stepping back, doing some type of research, because realistically, any business owner should not, and I'm sure do not just jump in and say, let's go in this direction.
The canned answer is going to always be, you never stop doing research. You never stop looking for opportunity. You never stop, maybe not necessarily pivoting, but expanding off existing products that you sell, or expanding on existing products that you produce, or looking for maybe a new region to work in. Not every region of the United States and not every region of the world is, I won't use the term suffering, but it's not experiencing the same difficulties that we are experiencing right now. So maybe I need to be in those regions. Maybe I need to be expanding my market. I'm always going to have, as an owner, as the decision maker, and that's really what it comes down to. I'm always going to be looking for opportunity, because I'm not in this, it's not a hobby. I'm not, I've got to make sure that my employees, they're taken care of, but also maybe they want some growth. Maybe they feel that they could do something different. Maybe the employee's got a suggestion. I don't know. It all comes down to research. I'm always researching so that I don't have to start from scratch. You know what I mean? Starting from scratch can be a little bit difficult when you experience something like this. I think those
Right.
that are succeeding are able to continue the research process even after they think they've got it solved.
We use the word being innovative, but it's so true, especially right now. Now, I have a question, Mr. Stevens, and it's popped up in the chat. It says, how important is it to have a line of credit with your banks? And how would you use it wisely? Now, we've talked about cash, but sometimes we can't really dismiss that line of credit either.
Oh, how important is it? It's critical. And it's a discussion I'm going to have with my banker, and it's a discussion I'm going to have with my accountant. How I always have lines of credit going. Most every business does. It's good practice. You may not necessarily have it deployed, but having the availability of a line of credit, or having availability of taking on some debt, I think helps me pivot, or helps me change direction, or it helps me to expand. Remember, don't worry about going bad. You always want to think about, how do I expand? And the line of credit, a relationship, a debt relationship, maybe an investor relationship, are critical. I personally have I don't use banks for lines of credit. I have an individual that I use, but it only because I can do it quicker. I don't have anything against banks, and I think banks are critical to the livelihood and the lifeblood of a business. But there are different ways to access debt and credit than just using an institution. Sometimes it's helpful to be able to make a quick decision if it's necessary. It's a style.
No, and I like the fact that you brought that up, because most of the time we've been conditioned to look at just the bank. So you're absolutely correct. Now, do you have an example of something else that you can look at other than our financial institutions such as the bank? Because a lot of go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep asking.
Well, because a lot of our small businesses, when they're starting to do those investments, and we're looking to create that business plan, we've been conditioned to go just to a bank. And like you said, they're a great institution to have. They're critical. However, you also have to have a good credit sometimes, and you don't necessarily meet the requirements. And you brought up maybe an angel investor. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, it can be an angel investor, it can be an investor, it can be a venture cap person, it can be anybody that's willing to take the risk in what you're trying to accomplish. All right, so we can just let's use a blanket term. So
Okay.
investor, I don't, you can call it whatever you want to call it. It's not, so let's just let me just describe it this way. So everybody's got the same credit sitting in front of me. So everybody's working with the same credit or close, and they have a decision that they need to make about expansion. And we'll just use that as an example. Or they're not quite achieving what they need in revenues to help them expand. So you can do a couple of things. You can go to an investor, you can go to a venture company, and they like business plans and they like to be presented to, and they want to see all the financials, they want to see all the performance and all the projections. And that's a very useful process, and you're likely going to get a partner out of it. They're not just going to invest, but they likely might want to have a little say in where you're going with your company. And then there's the bank. And there's the bank through lines of credit. There's a bank through a straight up traditional loan. There's SBA. There's all these different types of organizations that are available to you. But ultimately, it's going to come back to the bank. And then there are individuals, and you all have got to be careful how you hear this. But sometimes I use hard money lenders because I am able to turn around a process very quickly, and then I'm in and out. So for example, I might be borrowing on Friday and paying back on Wednesday. And it just so happens that to do that through a bank is a little complicated, but I have somebody that I use as a partner, but he's also a funder. When I need to acquire something, whether it's land or product or something, he's right there for me. He's not cheap, but I'm also not, it's not a long-term relationship. It's over very quickly. So there's different types of ways. It's more about style. It's also more about the product that you're selling. If it's a commodity, you might have a little difficulty unless you're real established to have the traditional relationship with a venture investor. But the bank's gonna be willing to invest with you if your business plan is strong and your financials are good, your cash flow is strong, your ability to pay. Again, it comes down to style. It also comes down to the stomach that you have. Hard money lenders are not somebody you want to take lightly, so I don't suggest it. I do like the bank and I like the investment, and the angel investor is not far from being a hard money lender because they're always going to want a lot from your company. So you have to kind of always research what you're doing.
So bottom line is relationship, right?
Yeah.
Ultimate
Yeah.
is relationship. And you're right. You touched on how important a business plan is. But when we're talking about how important that business plan is, when you're requesting money from an investor in a bank, maybe I'm showing up with a business plan, but it's not as fine-tuned. Can those business plan make or break you when you're going in for those?
No, I think your financials are going to make or break you. I I know my colleagues in the SBA and the SCORE, whatever, are going to scoff at this, but your business plan is only as good as the business that you envision doing. A business plan is sometimes a way of putting you off so that you're going to develop your idea better. The business plan is a it's always going to be a mystery in my mind. I've never had one. I've helped produce them. But if you're going to do a business plan, you better have a very specific purpose to do it, because it's taking time away from what it is you're trying to accomplish as an operator. Don't misunderstand that I don't think it's important. It's really important because it may be helping you think through. It may be your research that you're doing.
Right.
But don't equate the business plan to a successful relationship with your bank. Your bank may want it because you're asking for more money than they got a stomach for. They want to see a plan. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be something very straightforward. You just need to demonstrate that what you're borrowing, your cash flow that you're going to generate for the product, which is the reason that you're borrowing the money, is able to fulfill the obligation of that loan. I mean, I'm sorry that that's a little circular, but it's kind of the way it works. There's somebody that I know that opened up a restaurant in Lower Manhattan, and he just he was winging it. He just opened, and he took the money that he got it started, no plan, no nothing. Now he's got 6 of them. Never had a plan, but that's very isolated. Research. Think of it instead of a business plan. Think of it as research. I'm doing research on what I'm trying to accomplish.
Now, I have a question on here, and it says, what kind of scenario makes more sense for some entrepreneurs to create a nonprofit versus opening an LLC?
Talk to your lawyer. Sorry. Okay, so there are some things that you have to think through about the nonprofit, through the LLC, corporation. They're all companies. They're all actually corporations, right? It's just the way they budget. Zero budget versus I'm trying to make a profit. I had to, it's a lot about how do you see your relationship with your customer and how do you see your relationship with what you do with the money that you're making. The relationship in a nonprofit is very different than a for-profit, but somebody's getting paid, right? Lighthouse for the Blind makes, I don't know, they generate millions of dollars worth of fabric for the government and, things that, military people wear. Where does the money go? It goes to support the programming for visually impaired people. There's still money being generated and they still have to make a margin so that they can support the programs for the visually impaired. That's the whole purpose. So you gotta have to, the mission's gonna be a little bit different. The mission's very defined in a nonprofit. The setting up a 501c3 or setting up whatever it is you're trying to set up has a lot of obligations to it. Don't think you're not making it any easier either way. You still have to generate revenues and minimize cost of trying to generate those revenues. I'm not going to tell you which is the best way to go. It's more about your style and it's more about your vision and what you're trying to accomplish.
No, it's very well said, Mr. Stevens, and you're absolutely right, because it comes down to what your true focus is going to be, whether it's to serve, and even if it is to serve, you still have to have some type of revenue to maintain the services that you're going to be providing. Correct. Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Because I tell you what, I'm definitely. Go ahead.
Can I just jump in here? There are companies that choose to be for-profit that give away a significant or all of their profits to some targeted group or some targeted reason. So, and the reason that they stay for profit is because they want to control their money. Sometimes when you're in a nonprofit, you're giving up some control of outcomes. So again, it may be simply the style of how you want to operate that determines whether you go the nonprofit, LLC, C Corp, S Corp. I mean, there's hybrids now, right? They've been hybrids for years. You can do a little bit of both. I mean, it's all about the style and how much control you want of what it is that you're doing with your money. You might want to, you listeners might want to take that into account when you're trying to decide how best to set up. Sorry.
No, that's actually very beneficial to be able to understand that, because I've even heard of B corporations, right?
Yeah.
That are, right. And so you're right. The categories are growing, and we do have to stay on top and do the research on how best we want it to apply to us in serving the community or maintaining a company. Are there any other questions?
And I can guarantee you one thing, I'm not the one to talk to you about it.
No, but we have several other subject matter experts that we have relationships with. Perfect. And that's a very good point, because in Buy Local Grow SA, we have so many, very capable businesses that bring that type of skill set to our business owners. Absolutely. Or even someone who's trying to create that.
Absolutely.
Mr. Stevens, it has been a pleasure. Definitely entertaining. Definitely, your knowledge and your experience does come, and it's very obvious. It's been a pleasure learning from you. And by all means, if anybody wants to have another question, or maybe you're not quite gutsy enough to ask the questions here, email Mighty at maestrocenter.org, because every question that you have, we want to make sure that you have that answer. Now, it may not be the answer that you want to hear, but it's an answer that I'm sure that you've probably been thinking about and just not quite ready to get the answer to it. So at this time, Mighty, do we have our winner?
Actually, they were not able to join our call because they were super busy, but I'm still going to announce it. So if Sabrina, can you pull up the slide? We already spoke to him this morning. So we won't be able to have him on our call today, but it's Hush Food and Alcohol Delivery Service. They're our winner, Arnold Martinez and Bennett Rodriguez. And here's their contact information. They are amazing. They deliver food and drinks to people that are in the culinary industry. So for those folks that are in the kitchen and that they want to eat something outside from the regular kitchen. So it's a very unique and really interesting business. So I invite you all to go take a look at them. And there are our lucky winner for our webinar for our Buy Local Grow SA giveaway this week. So congratulations.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Mr. Martinez. And thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez, for being here and being part of that team. So as you heard, our winner for this week is Hush Food and Alcohol Delivery Services. And if you're wanting something fresh and immediate, they are the people to go to and this week's winners. So now the other thing too is let's not dismiss that. Remember, as I said, you know, when you buy and grow SA, go register to our site, right, Marty? Now, with Buy Local Grow SA, yes, it's a local initiative that you're able to aim and support our local buyers. However, with the Maestro Entrepreneur Center, you're also growing into a different area. Tell me a little bit more about those areas, Marty. Next slide, please.
There's an opportunity to be actually posting your procurement opportunities, not procurement necessarily, but your opportunities. So let's say you're a business that needs to buy t-shirts for all of your employees. You can post that opportunity on our website and people can bid on it through our website in order to fulfill that opportunity. And that way you're ensuring that you're supporting our local businesses and our local economy. So I would really encourage you to go and take a look at it. It's incredible, and more features are being added to it as we speak. So not only for the chance of winning the $500, I know right now it sounds really appealing, but I'm sure that you're going to take away a lot more than that amount of money with all of the resources we have to provide to you all. And before I go, I want to thank Hugh for being here with us today. That information was amazing. And I just want him to mention a little bit about his role at the NAGEM Center and how he helps businesses, so that if you need help in any way and students can support that effort, I would really like you to touch base on that so that we can provide that resource as well for you all.
Right now?
Yes.
If you have an issue, challenge, or opportunity, and you would like to have some fresh thought on it, bring it to the NAGEM Center, because the students are able to bring a very, very unencumbered point of view to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in your business. And it's not just marketing. It could be organizational, it could be production, it could be structure, what it is that you're trying to, it could be a strategic plan, it could be anything. But the students make it they produce very useful outcomes for businesses that work with us. It could be a nonprofit. Marty and I did a municipal project when we first started the NAGEM Center. So, I mean, it could be any organization, does not matter. Nonprofit, for-profit, government entity, does not matter. We'd love to have you.
And this is an affiliation with St. Mary's University?
Correct. It is the St. Mary's University's Harvey E. NAGEM, Center for Business Innovation and Corporate Social Responsibility. Very short name.
Now, audience, you heard that. That's here locally, here in San Antonio, St. Mary's University. Take advantage. You've just got a personal invitation from Mr. Stevens. So I challenge you to reach out to them, because, again, it gives you a time to be able to pivot in a different direction, not having to start all over, but maybe refresh some of those ideas. Now, talk about refreshing some of those ideas. The Maestro Entrepreneur Center. Next slide, please. You're learning more about the Maestro Center, right, Mighty? Because we're talking about having not just resources online. We still have that brick and mortar that seems to be kind of disappearing a little bit. Not so true. The Maestro Entrepreneur Center is here, and it's here for the duration.
And if you haven't visited our center, I highly recommend and invite you to come over. Once you see it and experience it, it really changes your life. So we have office space available, incubation kitchen, that's a shared space for those in the culinary business, but also we provide a lot of training and a lot of opportunities for your business. So if you haven't visited us, just yet, I invite you to come over. And since now we're a hub for the city of San Antonio for small businesses, if you're located anywhere in town, you're still welcome. You're welcome to come from across the town or across the city just to visit us, and we encourage you to do so. And then if you missed a webinar, you can find us in our podcast. So visit our website in order to access our webinars or access our podcast. So thank you all for listening in and for participating once again in our webinar Wednesdays.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's finish out, because I want to make sure that people know and make sure that they're appreciated, because thank you. Our next slide, please. I want to say thank you once again to HEB, Wells Fargo, the City of San Antonio, their Economic Development Department, and as always, our supporters. But most importantly, I want to thank our audience and our listeners, because we want to make sure that we hear back from you. You'll receive a survey, and please, I know you've been overwhelmed with surveys, but we want to make sure that we bring things that are valuable to you, that are going to impact you, and that we make a change, but a change that's going to be for the better. And don't forget, every Wednesday, we're here to serve you. And for those of you who want to hear it in Spanish, stay tuned and give us a few minutes as we proceed into the Spanish version.
And just as a last note, Hugh mentioned a lot, go to your CPA or to your accountant. And I just want to mention that next session, we're going to have a CPA come and talk to us about accounting and about taxes. So stay tuned. I know it's a topic that most of you don't want to listen, but it's extremely important, as Mr. Stevens just emphasized. So please stay tuned and come and join us for our next week's webinar. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
And give us a few seconds as we get ready to transition over to the Spanish version.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh.
Bueno, bienvenidos. Hoy es miércoles, en el webinar de miércoles. Hoy vamos a hablar sobre negocios, pero no nomás sobre negocios, pero en qué manera podemos avanzar, no nomás con sus negocios. Pero vamos a comenzar.
Gracias, Juanita.
Como siempre, bienvenidos. Pero quiero informarles, antes que comencemos, sobre the Buy Local Grow SA. Buy Local Grow SA es una plataforma para dueños de negocios como ustedes. Es a través de un sitio web, pueden accesar recursos gratis para poder avanzar y oportunidades de adecuación y hacer promoción de sus negocios y aumentar su visibilidad absolutamente gratis. También tenemos algunos mejores y características nuevos que pueden ser posibles para publicar y promocionar su negocio por su perfil. Y vamos a tomar oportunidad para hacer relación a una venta si tiene usted quieren presentar un servicio o producto nuevo. Pero cuando van a utilizar a Buy Local Grow SA, también pueden haber y recibir servicios. Los servicios o productos que puedan presentar. También agregamos oportunidades, adecuaciones donde pueden guardar y también pueden presentar otras oportunidades a publicar sus oportunidades de contratos. Solamente toma como unos 5 o 10 minutos, pero cuando reciben la oportunidad y permiso para poder acceder a todos los recursos, pueden desbloquear y a abrir otra nueva oportunidad de hacer negocio aquí en San Antonio. Now, Mari, dime tú, ¿qué más tenemos también?
Estamos regalando $500 por 8 semanas. Y estos $500 es para poder darle un extra push a tu negocio para que los puedas utilizar de la manera que tú necesites y la manera que tú quieras. Pero no solo eso, también te invitamos a que te registres con Buy Local Grow SA porque ya escucharon a Juanita mencionar sobre todos los beneficios que tiene. Créanme que van a accesar más de los $500 le van a sacar el jugo a todos los recursos que tenemos para ofrecer. Así que no solo se registren para poder ganar esos $500, los invito a que se registren por todos los recursos que tenemos disponibles para poder crecer y para poder llevar a tu negocio a ese siguiente nivel. Así que si no lo has hecho, te invito a que lo hagas ahorita para poder ganarse los $500 y para poder ganar todos esos recursos completamente gratis.
Pero, Mari, ¿quién ganó esta semana?
Esta semana ganó Hush Food Delivery and Alcohol. Ellos hacen delivery de comida a las personas que se dedican a la industria culinaria en San Antonio. Arnold Martínez y Bennett Rodríguez son los ganadores de esta semana. Hoy no nos pudieron acompañar, pero la semana pasada sí tuvimos al ganador presente en la llamada. Ojalá lo podamos traer la próxima semana, pero si tú no has participado todavía y si tú no te has registrado, te invito a que te registres para poder ser uno de los ganadores de nuestro concurso.
Pero no nomás para ganar. Quiero que escuchen que es una oportunidad para que se puedan hacer público y a reconocer la visibilidad de sus negocios. Gracias, señor Martínez, por poder presentar su negocio y muchas felicidades en ganando. Pero no nomás vayan a poder utilizar los recursos, pero queremos dar gracias. Next slide. Queremos dar gracias a nuestros patrocinadores, H-E-B, Wells Fargo, la ciudad de San Antonio, la Económica Departamento de Development, y también a los que los aseguran y apoyan a poder seguir avanzando con nuestros negocios. Gracias y también a los que están escuchando. Pero no nos van a estar aquí nomás para escuchar lo que yo tengo que decir. Ustedes están aquí para oír de un experto que tiene la experiencia y más para poder avanzar. Antes de St. Mary's University, el señor Stevens se dispensó con el oficial interno de operaciones, estrategias y financieras de Main Brand LLC, con oficinas en Booth Bay Harbor y Lockheed Mills, Maine. También incluyó las organizaciones de unas series de empresas y marcas de productos, de materiales que se cerraron, pero se descontinuaron todos. Además, señor Stevens comenzó estrategias para apoyar y reconocer y desarrollar otros tipos de marcas. También se desarrolló productos y también abordó operaciones para poder avanzar y estados en ingresos y efectivos y análisis de ganas y también análisis de costos. Pero como les dije, el señor Hughes es director del Centro de Harvey Mind de aquí en Innovación con la University de St. Mary's y también es miembro de la Junta de Maestro Entrepreneur Center. Y aquí está Mari para poder presentar la información que el señor Hughes tiene.
Y solo para que sepan, les quiero comentar que yo conozco a Hugh desde hace un montón de tiempo. Él vino a San Antonio y se mudó a San Antonio desde Nueva York porque la persona que estaba fundando el centro en St. Mary's lo quería a él para que él manejara ese centro gracias a la experiencia que él tiene. O sea, él ha trabajado en universidades, pero no solo en universidades. Él tiene sus propias empresas y él es muy humilde y no lo menciona, pero tiene una de las empresas de ropa que hacen los trajes, tuxedos y hacen los trajes más finos y son hechos a la medida y son hechos a como el público lo quiere y esa compañía la ha manejado por más de 30 años. Entonces, es
Claro.
experto en negocios y no solo ese negocio, tiene varios negocios. Entonces, hoy yo les voy a compartir la información que él tiene, que él nos presentó hace un ratito y como yo les menciono, o sea, hemos tenido estas conversaciones un montón de veces con Hugh y pensamos igual y sabemos que esta información es crítica y sumamente importante para tu negocio. Entonces, hoy yo voy a tratar de hacer mi mejor esfuerzo y lo mejor que pueda para poder traducir toda la información que fue presentada en inglés para poder ayudarles a nuestra comunidad de personas que solo hablan en español. Así que muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros hoy.
So, vamos a hablar de negocios.
Sí, hablemos de negocios, Juanita. Ok, para empezar, Hugh mencionaba que él, o sea, solo para que sepan, él no es un contador y él no les quiere dar consejos de contabilidad ni cómo manejar tu dinero. Él simple y sencillamente está aquí para hablarnos sobre el manejo de nuestro flujo de efectivo y nuestro flujo de caja. Cómo manejamos ese flujo de caja va a ser crítico a la manera que nosotros tomamos decisiones el día a día. O sea, él se enfocó más en la parte de operaciones, más que en la parte financiera, que es lo que se lo dejamos a nuestro contador. Entonces, quiero ser bien específica, que no estamos aquí para darles consejos de contabilidad ni de finanzas, sino que de cómo manejar tus operaciones y cómo tomar mejores decisiones para manejar tu flujo de caja. Entonces aquí tenemos las entradas y salidas de efectivo. Claro, las entradas de efectivo pueden ser actividades de explotación, como efectivo recibido de ingresos, también la actividad de inversiones, venta de activos operativos o venta de inversiones o cobro de préstamos, y actividades de financiamiento, emisiones de acciones o bonos y pagarés. Pero como les mencionaba, no voy a hablar sobre las actividades de inversiones ni de financiamiento, sino que de el efectivo recibido de ingresos. Y
Pero
cuando,
también, pero la cosa, Mari, la cosa que también que necesitamos que enfocar es el día de día, el
Ujú.
aspecto de flujo en el efectivo es la manera que los afecta una empresa. So, para enfocarlos es la actividad de explotaciones.
Exactamente, porque tú ya tienes la habilidad de crear un producto o un servicio y tú eres el experto y queremos que tomes las mejores decisiones. Claro, cuando viene tu contador al final del mes a agarrar toda la información que tu bookkeeper ha colectado a través del mes, ellos te van a dar una opinión y te van a decir cómo está tu negocio, cuál es la salud de tu negocio, el estado, etcétera. Pero es súper importante que tú sepas cuál es el flujo de caja y cuál es el flujo de efectivo día a día para poder tomar las decisiones. Ok, necesito comprar más producto. Si tu producto no se está vendiendo y no estás trayendo ventas, no necesitas comprar producto adicional para crear ese producto o servicio que estás haciendo si no se te vende. Entonces, toda esas decisiones que uno toma al día, que son bien poquitas, se van acumulando y eso es lo que te va a decir exactamente dónde, la salud de tu negocio y dónde te encuentras financieramente.
Pero
Entonces,
correcto, pero correctamente, y si estoy equivocada, Mari, una de las cosas que también um, presentó señor Stevens es los details son los importantes para poder para tener operación día a día. Sí los afecta, pero esos son los contadores. Y para documentar también es importante, porque tienes que documentar. Pero la relación es importante a tener con tu contador, porque esos son los tipos de información que vas a necesitar para hacer la decisión de día a día.
exactamente, exactamente. Y como mencionaba el señor Stevens, muchas decisiones se benefician de la información sobre el proceso de flujo de caja, así como mencionabas, Juanita. Y el efectivo fluye continuamente hacia y desde un negocio activo. Y esta gráfica que estamos viendo ahorita nos ilustra varios ejemplos de entradas, como les mencionaba, y salidas de flujo de caja también. Y hay actividades como operativas, de inversión y de financiamiento. Quiero que se tomen un minuto antes de continuar para revisar algunos ejemplos como lo mencionaba Juanita, es súper importante tener esos detalles al día, porque eso es lo que va a afectar tu negocio en un largo plazo. Porque puedes que hoy tengas cierto flujo de efectivo, pero que esté afectado particularmente el día de hoy o en las semanas previas, que todavía no han sido reflejados en tus estados financieros y pueda que no te des cuenta de cómo está tu negocio. O sea, por ejemplo, pegó COVID, todos tuvieron que cerrar su empresa. Si tú no tuviste el detalle del flujo de caja al día, cuando pasó lo de COVID, es imposible que tú sepas dónde está tu negocio y dónde estás parado ahora mismo. Entonces es sumamente importante saber esos detalles y saberlo al día para poder tomar mejores decisiones. Next slide.
Y también, bueno, entonces eso quiere decir, la pregunta es cómo beneficia o afecta el estado de su flujo de efectivo contra la caja de su negocio.
Sí, el estado de flujos de efectivo proporciona información sobre los flujos de efectivo que se pierden cuando el balance general y el estado de resultados solo nos informan indirectamente. El estado de flujos de efectivo ayuda a los usuarios a evaluar la capacidad de una empresa para generar efectivo, la capacidad de una empresa para cumplir con sus obligaciones. Esto, ojo, es sumamente importante, la capacidad de una empresa para cumplir con sus obligaciones. Si tú no tienes el efectivo suficiente para cumplir para tus obligaciones, algo está mal y tienes que actuar inmediatamente. También las razones de las diferencias entre los ingresos y los flujos de efectivo asociados son sumamente importantes, como lo es el efecto de las actividades de inversión y financiamientos en efectivo y la posición financiera de una empresa. Como les mencionaba, es súper importante saber exactamente dónde, o sea, cuáles son tus ingresos, pues fijos. Bueno, no todos tenemos ingresos fijos, pero sí tenemos egresos fijos. Tenemos costos que tenemos que cubrir, que son fijos, que son obligaciones de nuestra empresa y tenemos que generar el suficiente flujo de caja para poder cubrir esos costos, pero no solo eso, para poder generar eh, eh, ingresos adicionales para poder cubrir tu nómina, para poder pagarle a tus empleados. O sea, no solo estás cubriendo costos para cubrir los costos que tenés de utilidad en tu empresa. También, o sea, cuando estás manejando una empresa, estás dando de comer a un montón de gente y estás velando por el bienestar de tus empleados. Entonces, tenés que estar sumamente presente y saber al día cómo estás para poder saber si al final del mes vas a poder cumplir con tus obligaciones como la nómina, el seguro, la renta de maquinaria, la renta de tu edificio, que todos estos son costos que no se van independientemente de cuánto dinero traigas al día. Estos costos, la mayoría son fijos y tenés que tener eso súper presente para saber el bienestar y dónde se encuentra tu flujo de caja actualmente.
Pero, también estamos notando, Mari, es las razones, las diferencias entre los ingresos y los flujos de efectivos asociados. En veces el efecto no es notado inmediatamente. Uno tiene que estar preparado para notar la diferencia. Al principio o antes no estamos listos porque no estamos esperando como el efecto de COVID, ¿verdad? Pero uno cuando está con su negocio, comenzando una empresa o ya estamos, tenemos que notar la diferencia. En realidad no se nota la diferencia inmediatamente, ¿verdad?
Correcto, y por eso es súper importante estar encima de los números y saber dónde estás parado, porque, y si tú tienes un contador que lo contrataste para ser tu contador adentro de tu empresa, vas a tener más visibilidad, pero es extremadamente caro. Pero por eso, o sea, si tú no tienes ese conocimiento y no eres capaz de saber el día al día de tu negocio, pues tienes que contratar a alguien, tienes que saber y poder confiar en esa persona para decirte exactamente dónde estás, porque tú no vas a poder tomar decisiones de que, ¿qué pasa si contratas a 3 personas más y no puedes cumplir con la obligación de pagar esas nóminas? ¿Qué pasa? O sea, vas a tener que agarrar dinero prestado para poder cumplir con esos costos que ya tenés. Pero si tú sabes dónde estás parado al día, vas a poder tomar esas mejores decisiones y vas a decir, ok, estoy generando tanto, por lo cual tengo la capacidad de contratar a 3 personas más para que me ayuden a incrementar mi producción. Entonces, esos son los tipos de decisiones que tú tienes que tener presente y que tienes que saber dónde estás parado para poder tomar esas decisiones. ¿Cierto, Juanita?
Es claro que sí, pero ¿cuál es el positivo de tener un buen estado de flujo de efectivo?
Next slide. Ahorita lo vamos a cubrir. Ok, la
Gracias.
finalidad del estado de flujo de efectivo. ¿Por qué es importante? Porque el flujo de efectivo o el flujo de caja, como lo llaman algunas personas, proporciona información sobre la fuente de la aplicación de las entradas y salidas de efectivo para un periodo contable. Y muchas compañías lo separan por quarters. Entonces, si lo dividen por 4 veces al año, si lo dividen por 4 en el año, eso cuenta una historia. Y nos mencionaba Mr. Stevens que cuando tú ves el flujo de caja, cuenta una historia y tú sabes exactamente qué está pasando y puedes tomar mejores decisiones para poder incrementar tus ventas o quizá agregarle otro servicio que no estás ofreciendo actualmente porque no tienes suficientes ventas al principio del año o al final del año. O qué otro ejemplo dio, que digamos que es una compañía que, bueno, eso lo voy a cubrir en un ratito, terminemos acá, no me voy a adelantar. Entonces, el flujo de caja abarca estas tres cosas fundamentales,
Principales.
que son las operaciones de nuestra empresa, las inversiones de nuestra empresa y el financiamiento si es que tenemos alguno. Y también nos presentan los cambios en efectivo como los resultados de las actividades comerciales. Entonces, ¿estamos vendiendo o no estamos vendiendo? Y puedes darte cuenta inmediatamente si hay un problema. Y la ventaja es que podemos actuar rápido y podemos tomar decisiones para poder cambiar eso que nos está afectando. Entonces, no hay ventas. ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué no estamos trayendo suficiente efectivo? Y podemos arrancar, o sea, ¿cómo les digo? Arrancar el problema desde la raíz inmediatamente, si nosotros sabemos cómo está nuestro flujo de efectivo el día al día. También comunica información sobre la adaptabilidad financiera de una empresa durante un periodo de tiempo determinado. Por ejemplo, nos mencionaba Mr. Stevens que no solo porque COVID está pasando, vas a cambiar la operación de tu empresa completamente, sino que tenés que pensar
Claro.
más a futuro y tenés que hacer un montón de investigación. Investigar cuánto está cobrando tu competidor o investigar qué es lo que los clientes van a necesitar y van a querer comprar de ti en un futuro. O sea, la investigación es clave para poder tomar esas decisiones. Y no solo porque está pasando COVID quiere decir que vas a cambiar completamente, como mencionaba Hugh, que él compró, o sea, él cambió la manera de operar de su compañía durante el 2008 y 2007, 2008, cuando estaba pasando la crisis económica. Pero él hizo ese cambio y bajó los precios, cortó gastos para poder bajarle el precio a su producto, para poder vender más. Entonces eso le presentó una oportunidad a él para seguir generando y para poder incrementar sus ventas durante ese periodo, pero no solo en ese periodo, o sea, él pensó más allá de la situación económica. O sea, igual los invitamos a que hoy no solo te enfoques por COVID, porque esto es algo que está pasando ahorita y en unos meses puede ser otra cosa o el próximo año puede ser otra cosa. Si tú tienes un plan y sabes exactamente tu flujo de efectivo, te va a ayudar a tomar esas decisiones para poder tomar decisiones que están well-rounded, como lo dicen en inglés, que son decisiones inteligentes, que estás fijándote en todo el entorno para poder tomar esas decisiones.
Pero por este webinar, lo que los vamos a enfocar y quiero estresar que vamos a buscar en manera de operaciones, ¿verdad? Porque eso es lo que queremos asegurar que entienden. La importancia de estabilizar su flujo de efectivo, pero también qué papel juega el estado de declaración para tu negocio.
Next slide. Ok, el estado de flujo de efectivo enumera todas las entradas de efectivo y todas las salidas de efectivo durante un periodo sobre el que se informa por categoría, como mencionábamos, el operativo, de inversión o de financiamiento. Y él explica el cambio en efectivo durante el periodo y es requerido por GAAP. Muchas personas no saben qué es GAAP. GAAP significa General Accepted Accounting Principles, que son los principios aceptados por los departamentos de contabilidad para asegurarse que como tú estás manejando tu contabilidad es acorde a la ley y cuando tú estés pagando impuestos al IRS en un futuro, estés asegurando que que estás manejando tu contabilidad correctamente. Y aquí nos menciona que muchas empresas han experimentado la quiebra porque no pudieron generar suficiente efectivo para satisfacer sus obligaciones. La supervivencia y el éxito de cada negocio depende de su capacidad para crear y obtener efectivo. El efectivo es el rey, especialmente durante una recesión económica. Si tú no puedes generar suficiente efectivo, no vas a poder sobrevivir. Así que esto es clave, quiero que lo entiendan, porque tener efectivo y tener la capacidad de generar ese efectivo es lo que va a determinar qué tan successful, qué tan...
Avanzar para poder el nuevo.
no, qué tan accesible o qué tan bueno sea tu negocio. Entonces, esto es súper importante que lo entendamos. Si tú no entiendes eso o tienes algún problema, Hugh mencionaba que es súper importante que lo hables con tu contador o que lo hables con tu banco. Quizá sea una buena idea pedir una línea de crédito para poder incrementar las operaciones, para poder incrementar tus ventas. Y como Hugh siempre dijo, haz tu investigación. Investiga cómo mejorar tu negocio, cómo mejorar tus prácticas, cómo reducir tus costos para poder generar más efectivo. Entonces, esto es clave. Next slide.
Antes que avanzamos al slide, un momento. Una cosa que quiero estresar es, un momento, es el cambio de efectivo durante este periodo de mantener su empresas o sus negocios, ¿verdad? Que tienen que entender y reconocer las razones que cambia durante este momento, ¿verdad? Porque lo que estresó Mr. Stevens fue que uno tiene que entender qué es el afecto y por qué está afectando. Tienen que entender antes, durante y la manera que vamos a mantener después. Eso es lo que me recuerdo bien.
Sí, Juanita,
Mari.
toda la razón. O sea, es súper importante saber dónde estás, dónde estabas hace un mes, dónde estás ahora y dónde estás en otro mes o un año, o dependiendo del periodo de tiempo que estás viendo. Y tenés que saber cuáles son tus metas y objetivos para poder alcanzar ese nivel de efectivo que tú necesitas para cubrir tus obligaciones. Entonces, Hugh mencionaba que es bien importante saber el historial, el presente y el futuro para tomar mejores decisiones. Es
Claro.
completamente correcto, Juanita.
Y estoy viendo estos elementos. Dime un poquito más de estos.
Ok, la selección de actividades operativas, y aquí, o sea, me voy a enfocar en las operaciones, pero también les voy a mencionar un poquito sobre las inversiones y financiamiento. La sección de actividades operativas informa los efectos en efectivo de los elementos de la utilidad neta. Esto nos va a decir exactamente, o sea, el neto, el balance. Nos suman los números, no nos suman los números. Y mencionaba que una compañía sin fines, o sea, una compañía con fines de lucro están en negocios para hacer dinero, ¿no? Entonces, la utilidad neta va a ser más que cero para poder saber si estás ganando o perdiendo dinero. Pero si estás hablando de una organización sin fines de lucro, la utilidad neta va a ser cero, porque el dinero que estás trayendo lo estás utilizando y lo estás gastando. Entonces, va a depender de la estructura de tu organización, pero es súper importante que el flujo de caja tenga una utilidad neta positiva, porque si no, estás perdiendo dinero y no estás haciendo suficiente dinero para poder cubrir esa utilidad. También mencionaba la selección de actividades de inversión que informan los efectos en efectivo de la adquisición y disposición de activos, distintos como inventario o equivalentes a efectivo. También puede ser la propiedad que tú compras para tu negocio, o sea, si esa es una actividad de inversión. Entonces también el flujo de caja te va a afectar dependiendo si tienes una inversión líquida o no. Por ejemplo, si tú tienes alguna inversión en el mercado que es líquida, que tú puedes vender el siguiente día si necesitas el efectivo, eso te va a dar una mejor visibilidad y una mejor, o sea, te va a dar una mejor visión para poder tomar esas mejores decisiones. Pero si tu única inversión es, por ejemplo, en la propiedad donde tienes ubicado tu negocio, esa inversión es ilíquida. ¿Qué significa eso? Que es un poquito más difícil poder venderla para obtener ese efectivo. Entonces, sabiendo los diferentes tipos de inversiones y entendiendo esos tipos de inversiones que tú tienes como parte de tu negocio, o ya sea alimentario, el inventario es líquido porque es lo que estamos moviendo al día a día. Entonces, sabiendo diferenciar entre líquido versus no líquido, te va a dar una mejor oportunidad de ver cómo está parado tu negocio y si llega un día de necesidad y necesitas convertir esa inversión en liquidez, eso también te da, o sea, te da oportunidad para poder planear. Entonces, si tú sabes que vas a pasar por un momento difícil, entonces tienes que planear desde antes y decir, bueno, mejor voy a invertir en inversiones que son líquidas para poder sacar dinero de esas inversiones dado el caso que lo necesite. También como las actividades de financiamiento, que es como la recompensa de acciones o la emisión de reembolso de títulos o deuda. También los pagos de dividendos efectivos. No me voy a meter en detalle a esto porque ya es un poquito más en detalle. Y, o sea, yo tengo un poco de experiencia en las finanzas y puedo estar aquí todo el día hablándoles de esto, pero eso no es el punto. Solo quiero que vean los diferentes tipos de flujo de caja y cómo les afecta a ustedes personalmente. Entonces, también tengan en mente las operaciones, que es lo más importante, lo que nos estamos enfocando hoy en día, pero también hagan un poquito de investigación sobre esas actividades de inversión y cómo puede afectar tu negocio y cómo cada negocio es diferente, entonces te puede afectar completamente diferente. Next slide.
So, si vamos a ver entradas y salidas de efectivo, cómo los encontramos y las actividades que los afecta, ¿verdad?
Claro que sí, los flujos de efectivo de las actividades operativas son tanto las entradas como las salidas de efectivo que resultan de las actividades informadas en este estado de resultados. Es lo que mencionábamos. O sea, si tú estás vendiendo tacos, ¿cuáles son las entradas? O sea, los clientes que vienen y compran de tus tacos, de tus ricos tacos y que los compran día a día. Pero ¿cuáles son tus salidas? Tienes que ir a comprar las tortillas, tienes que comprar la proteína que vas a utilizar, tienes que pagar el gas para la cocina donde lo vas a cocinar, tienes que pagar electricidad o tienes que pagar empleados que son los que cocinan tus tacos. O sea, ese es un ejemplo. Y esto es esto es operación del día a día. Tienes que estar segura de que tienes suficientes tortillas para poder vender tus tacos y poder tener más entradas. Entonces, Aquí, en otras palabras, está clasificado el flujo de efectivo que incluye los elementos de utilidad neta, pero se informa sobre una base de efectivo. Las entradas de efectivo en esta sección incluyen efectivo cobrado de clientes y efectivo recibido de intereses y de dividendos. Porque mencionábamos también, o sea, ¿qué tal si no estás vendiendo un producto y estás vendiendo un servicio? Por ejemplo, si sos consultor y estás dando tu consultoría, eso quiere decir que tú no vas, no te van a pagar hasta que tú termines ese servicio. Entonces, el flujo va a ser completamente diferente y puede ser que algunos costos tú tengas que asumirlos antes de que recibas ese pago. Entonces, tal vez tus salidas van a ser antes de que entren tus entradas, o sea, que vengan tus entradas. Entonces, todas esas cosas tenés que verlas. También, digamos, por ejemplo, igual si es un servicio, un salón de belleza, por ejemplo, tú estás haciéndole el pelo a un cliente antes de que ellos se vayan de tu salón de belleza, ellos te van a pagar. Entonces, este servicio es diferente porque estás dando un servicio y te están pagando inmediatamente. Pero puede ser que hay otro caso que, por ejemplo, tú estás pagándole a un supplier, a alguien que te vende, por ejemplo, si tú tienes un supermercado y tú estás pagándole a la persona que te vende las frutas, porque estás comprando una cantidad enorme, puede ser que ellos te den un plazo de pagar en 30 días o en 60 días o en 90 días. Entonces eso quiere decir que tus salidas las puedes atrasar un poquito hasta que tú hayas vendido ese producto que tú compraste. Entonces, es un juego de sumar y restar, básicamente. Entonces, tú tienes que estar claro cuando te entra el dinero y cuando sale el dinero para poder planear de acuerdo, porque si tú estás dando consultoría y para poder dar este servicio tienes que viajar y tienes que viajar lejos a algún lugar, tú tienes que asumir esos costos antes y tienes que estar seguro que tienes ese efectivo para asumir esos costos antes de que te paguen. Entonces, es súper importante entender estas diferencias y saber cuáles son tus entradas y tus salidas.
No, claro que sí, porque hay diferentes maneras que puedes presentar, no nomás con servicios, no nomás con productos. En veces también tienes que ver en manera con cómo se van a utilizar, pero con utilizar con también cuando te van a pagar, porque son diferentes la manera que pueden presentarse. Pero Mari, hay unos ejemplos que podemos, que están estados para utilizar en este momento.
Claro
Ese
que
que
sí,
teníamos son ejemplos.
claro que sí. Next slide. Ok, aquí está un ejemplo de análisis y antes de entrar a detalle, quiero mencionar que si quieren estos slides y recursos adicionales, que me envíen un correo a mari@maestrocenter.org para obtener esta información. Ok, en este ejemplo están divididos por quarters. El primer quarter, que es de enero a marzo o abril, si no me equivoco. Por ejemplo, aquí esta empresa los primeros meses del mes y en los últimos meses del mes no están generando tanto efectivo, porque es una empresa que hace jardinería y limpia ventanas, o sea, hace jardinería, por ejemplo. Si tú ves la diferencia, quizá las personas que están buscando jardinería no están utilizando sus servicios en los meses de enero o en los meses de diciembre, y eso es muy obvio porque la gente está de fiesta, celebrando en familia, entonces no es, y también, o sea, es el invierno, se muere el pasto, no necesitamos el servicio de jardinería durante esos meses. Entonces, ¿qué podemos hacer como negocio? Aquí está contándonos una historia. Entonces, si vemos que nuestro flujo de caja está así de esta manera, ¿qué más podemos hacer para generar ingresos durante esos meses que son un poco más lentos? Quizá ofrecemos servicio de limpieza de ventanas o servicio de exacto, la venta de ventanas, por ejemplo, o tal vez reparación de ventanas porque viene el frío y la gente no quiere que se le meta el frío a su casa. Entonces, son otros servicios que tú como empresario puedes ofrecer aparte de solo tu jardinería, ya que tú sabes que esos meses son un poquito lentos. Entonces, al ver esta historia y al comparar, porque tus gastos no van a bajar. O sea, hay muchos gastos que son fijos que no bajan. Entonces, tú tienes que planear de acuerdo a estos gastos y de acuerdo a estos meses que son un poco más lentos. Y por ejemplo, o sea, voy a dar un ejemplo. Party City, que es una empresa enorme y todos lo conocemos porque nos encanta ir para comprar diferentes cosas para nuestros eventos que tenemos. Ellos hacen mucho más dinero en el mes de Halloween, por ejemplo, o de Navidad. ¿Por qué? Porque es seasonal, como le llamamos, es temporal, dependiendo a las temporadas del año. Entonces, ellos saben que la mayoría de sus ingresos y la mayoría del cash va a entrar esos meses. Ellos planean a futuro para utilizar ese cash que les entra en esos meses para poder generar otro tipo de servicios durante los meses que no son tan ocupados. Entonces, ellos siempre están vendiendo productos para diferentes eventos, ya sean baby showers, ya sean bodas, ya sea lo que sea. Entonces, ellos han buscado esos servicios adicionales para no tener esos meses muertos, por decirlo así. Entonces, al ver y estudiar tu análisis de flujo de caja, te das cuenta qué tenés que hacer para poder incrementar ese flujo y para poder incrementar esas ventas.
Claro, pero como dice el señor Mr. Stevens, siempre estamos investigando. Nunca nos quedamos en ese momento. No tenemos necesario a reinventar, pero a investigar en otras maneras que se puede utilizar su servicio, su producto, y en vez de combinar los dos en veces.
Claro que sí, y más que nada, saber exactamente qué están haciendo tus competidores. O sea, ve a la tienda. Si tú tienes una tienda, una panadería, ve a otras panaderías alrededor. Ve qué están cobrando, cómo lo están cobrando, qué tipo de productos. Y no te estoy diciendo que te copies de sus productos o servicios, porque si tú estás o sea, si tú tienes un negocio, es porque tu producto o tu servicio es inigualable y es súper bueno. Entonces, no te estoy diciendo que te vayas y te copies de lo que ellos están vendiendo, sino que como referencia tienes que saber cuáles son sus puntos de sus precios, cómo están poniéndole precios a sus productos, a ver si tus productos son competitivos también, porque como nos mencionaba Hugh, que él estaba vendiendo estos trajes para caballeros que eran súper caros, eran extremadamente caros. Y él los estaba vendiendo a muy bajo el precio. Entonces sus competidores le estaban ganando porque él estuvo a punto de la bancarrota y a punto de cerrar sus puertas porque no hizo su investigación y no hizo la investigación para poder saber exactamente a cuánto tiene que vender estos productos y servicios. Entonces, te invitamos a que hagas esa research. El research es clave, o sea, haz la investigación, investiga,
Claro.
llama, busca en internet, ve en persona, haz tu research para poder saber dónde estás parado. Y yo sé que varias compañías, o sea, también mencionábamos la importancia de un plan de negocios. Y Hugh nos mencionaba que él nunca tenía un plan de negocios, pero eso no quiere decir que él no hacía la investigación. Y si tú no tienes un
Claro.
plan de negocios, quizás es importante que lo hagas por el simple hecho de la parte de investigación y saber bien cuáles son tus competidores, qué tienes que hacer para poder salir adelante y para poder crear un negocio que sea sostenible. También nos mencionaba que para tener acceso a una línea de crédito o tener acceso a inversionistas, a ellos les gusta saber que tú tienes un plan en mente y que no solo estás haciéndolo a la deriva, ay, vamos a ver cómo sale. No, no es así porque tus empleados dependen de ti. O sea, tus empleados no están ahí contigo para ver, ay, a ver cómo me va. No, tú tienes que tener ese plan y saber que los ingresos que estás recibiendo van a cubrir esas obligaciones que tú tienes.
Pero también lo que estaba notando es que cuando estaba platicando el señor Stevens es tener un plan de negocio es importante. Claro que sí. Pero una cosa que tenemos que realizar es ese plan de negocio es importante porque te enfoca en la manera que vas a seguir avanzar tu negocio. No tiene que ser perfecto. Tiene que tener la idea directa, dirigir la idea para que comience. Cada plan es diferente, es lo que yo noté que dijo el señor Stevens. Como dijiste tú, él no tuvo uno y como quiera avanzó con negocios que siguen funcionando. Y está notando que hay uno que tiene que hacer una investigación y cambiarlo un poco. Pues ese plan de negocio es importante porque te puedes enfocar en la dirección y la manera que puedes avanzar tu negocio, pero no quiere decir que lo vas a tener y vas a presentar. Pero si vas a un banco a pedir para que puedas avanzar tu negocio, es importante tenerlo, pero tenerlo listo.
Ujú. Y claro que, o sea, yo recomiendo que cada año vayan de regreso a ese plan de negocio y lo visiten otra vez y vean, ¿cumplí mis metas o no las cumplí? ¿Llegué a mi meta de cierta cantidad de dinero o no? ¿Lo hice o no? ¿Y qué hice mal? ¿Qué puedo mejorar? ¿Qué puedo incluir en ese plan para poder seguir creciendo? ¿Qué puedo incluir en ese plan o qué puedo ver a futuro para poder incrementar mis ventas o incrementar mi equipo y crecer? O sea, es bien importante que tú sepas dónde estás parado y hagas esa investigación, porque si tú no lo haces, te vas a quedar atrás. Y ejemplos que me gustan dar ahora, todos nos acordamos, todos sabemos y todos nos acordamos de blockbusters. Y yo como niña chiquita, o sea, yo me acuerdo que para mí, los fines de semana, o sea, yo estaba esperando ansiosa el fin de semana, el viernes, para que mis papás me llevaran al Blockbuster para ver qué películas íbamos a alquilar, para ver qué películas o qué juegos de Nintendo iba a alquilar para llevar a la casa. Y también
Claro.
íbamos con nuestras amigas, ay, vamos a ver una película, vamos al Blockbuster a ver qué películas nuevas tienen. Y todos los viernes íbamos y felices para a buscar qué películas. Blockbuster no hizo su investigación, no hizo su investigación y por eso hoy en día los niños de ahora ni siquiera conocen qué es un blockbuster, porque ellos no hicieron su investigación. Entonces Netflix vino y se comió su mercado completamente, enterito. Porque si Blockbusters hubiera hecho la investigación y hubiera tomado acción a tiempo, ellos hubieran implementado un programa similar y hubieran entrado en competencia con Netflix, pero no, ellos no hicieron eso. Entonces, igual con cualquier negocio, o sea, hoy en día puede estar muy de moda, por ejemplo, digamos, un bar, los mixed drinks, que sean, o sea, los típicos, pero ahora hay tanta tecnología que ahora hacen drinks o bebidas alcohólicas para adultos que tienen humo y que son con sabores extravagantes y que, o sea, si tú no haces tu investigación y tú no aprendes a cómo llevar a tu barcito al siguiente nivel, pues te vas a quedar atrás. Así de sencillo. Igual con la cocina. Si ves que otros restaurantes están implementando, o sea, sabores distintos porque las personas tienen un paladar un poco más sofisticado. Tú tienes que ver todas esas cosas para no quedarte atrás y para poder seguir avanzando y creciendo en tu negocio.
Pero como siempre se dice, investigación, análisis, hacer preguntas. Al final, uno tiene la responsabilidad de hacer preguntas y cualquier pregunta es importante. Cada pregunta es importante. Y hablamos de preguntas. Hay unos que tienen una pregunta que podemos a responder en este momento. Los invito que por favor pongan su pregunta en el chat. ¿Está el señor Stevens todavía disponible o puede responder? Y si no, no hay problema. Manden un correo electrónico. ¿A dónde, Mari?
mari@maestrocenter.org. Y también otra cosa, antes de que nos movamos al siguiente tema, quería mencionar que Hugh maneja un centro de innovación en la Universidad de St. Mary's University aquí en San Antonio. Si tú quieres ideas innovativas o quieres que te ayuden con tu investigación o quieres ideas nuevas que vienen frescas de estudiantes que son súper capaces y súper inteligentes, por favor, contacten a Mr. Stevens porque él está dispuesto a ayudarte y a traer esas ideas innovadoras de los estudiantes. Así que, por favor, no tengan pena y mándenle un correo a él también. Y el correo electrónico de él es hstevens1@stmarytx.edu. Aquí Sabrina nos lo va a dejar en el chat para que lo apunten. Si tienen preguntas, por favor, no duden en contactarlo a él directamente también. Muchísimas gracias, Juanita. Muchísimas gracias, Mr. Stevens, por estar con nosotros hoy. Y continuemos.
Claro que sí, siempre tenemos algo para poder presentar. Now, al principio hablamos, next slide, por favor, de Buy Local Grow SA. Now, Buy Local Grow SA es un sitio comenzado para poder utilizar con todos, para que puedan avanzar y poner sus servicios. Solamente le toma como unos 5 minutos para poder hacer de manera que registrarse. Pero Mari, también cuando se registren con Buy Local Grow SA, ¿qué son otra oportunidad como el ganador que se presentó hoy, Mari?
Claro que sí. Ahora estamos incluyendo la posibilidad de que tú puedas anunciar tus oportunidades de negocios para poder incrementar y crecer la economía de San Antonio. Entonces, por ejemplo, si tu compañía necesita comprar camisetas con tu logo para tus empleados, hay una oportunidad que tú listes esta oportunidad en nuestra página web para que otra empresa pueda solicitar y pueda entrar en licitación contigo o pueda tener acceso a este contrato. Y no solo eso, también Buy Local Grow SA es como un Facebook o un LinkedIn, pero para negocios locales de San Antonio. Así que aprovechen esa oportunidad de poder conectarte con tu gente y con gente local de San Antonio y hacer negocios con ellos y no darle el negocio a gente afuera de nuestra ciudad para así poder incrementar los trabajos, incrementar las oportunidades y así incrementamos la economía de nuestro San Antonio.
Next slide, pero también para poder ganar, se tiene que registrar con Buy Local Grow SA y hay diferentes maneras también. ¿Y qué más van a poder aprovechar, Mari?
No solo les estamos dando los recursos gratis, sino que la oportunidad de ganar $500 por 8 semanas. Y si no me equivoco, esta es la tercera semana. Así que todavía hay mucha oportunidad. Tenemos 5 semanas que quedan para poder ser ganadores, 5 oportunidades más. Así que si tú no te has registrado, te invito a que te registres con Buy Local Grow SA. Muchísimas gracias. Gracias, Mr. Stevens. Gracias, Juanita, por ser fenomenal. Y antes de irnos, quería mencionar también sobre los beneficios y los recursos que ofrecemos en Maestro. Si todavía
Claro.
no has hecho un tour y no has visitado nuestro centro, te invito a que lo hagas porque cuéntales, Juanita, estamos llenos de oportunidades y una vez que tú visitas, te cambia la mente y te cambia la perspectiva completamente.
Oportunidades existen aquí en el Maestro Entrepreneur Center. So, hagan una llamada y hagan para que puedan visitar y reconocer y informarse de las oportunidades que tiene el Maestro Entrepreneur Center. También, si por una razón u otra se perdió y no pudo presentarse aquí con los webinars, también tenemos los webinars online donde pueden ir a escuchar y informarse. Pero más importante, que demos las gracias a HEB, los patrocinadores que los soportan y ha sido posible, que es HEB, la ciudad de San Antonio, el Departamento de Desarrollo Económico, también el Wells Fargo y más también a los que los apoyan. Y están viendo, notando aquí enfrente todos los negocios y las cámaras de comercio. Y más importante, a los que están escuchando, a ustedes. Como siempre, los vemos el próximo miércoles y para poder informar a todo. Y más importante, dennos su información que quieren ustedes escuchar, porque estamos aquí para apoyarlos y poder avanzar sus empresas. Y como siempre, gracias. A
Estamos
la siguiente.
enviando una encuesta. Yo sé que han estado recibiendo muchísimas encuestas, pero esta les toma un minuto. Solo queremos saber que nos den su opinión de cómo estamos haciendo los webinars y qué temas quisieran escuchar, como Juanita mencionaba. Así que tómense un minuto para responder nuestra encuesta y se los agradecemos de todo corazón. Así que gracias, Juanita,
Claro.
y nos
No,
vemos.
claro que sí. No, no, es importante porque queremos presentar información que le beneficia a todos.
Correcto. Muchísimas gracias, Juanita, y gracias a todos por acompañarnos. Hasta el próximo miércoles.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.